Another glorious day of staring at rocks, Nayara Zen muttered, adjusting her environmental suit's temperature controls as she trudged through the ruins of what was probably the millionth ancient civilization she had studied. The three suns of Astroloth beat down mercilessly, making the already unbearable humidity even worse. Her species' natural cooling membranes were working overtime, and she could feel the familiar trickle of condensation running down her neck ridges. The planet Astroloth had been a subject of interest ever since the Galactic Archaeological Society detected energy signatures that predated any known civilization. Of course, they had sent their best and brightest to investigate, meaning they sent Nayara, because nobody else wanted to spend 3 cycles on a jungle planet where everything either tried to eat you or give you a rash. Field log, day 84. Still no sign of intelligent life, past or present. She spoke into her recorder, pausing to swat away a floating spore pod that seemed determined to nest in her sensory crests, though I'm beginning to question the intelligence of accepting this assignment. The ruins stretched before her, a sprawling complex of weathered stone and mysterious alloys that her scanners couldn't quite identify. Ancient vines thick as transport cables wrapped around crumbling columns, their roots diving deep into the foundations of what must have once been an impressive structure. As she rounded another corner, her scanner began to beep insistently. "Well, that's new," she said, tapping the device with perhaps more force than necessary. The reading remained steady, pointing toward a section of wall that looked exactly like every other section of wall she'd seen for the past 3 months. But this one was different. After clearing away some vegetation and about 1,000 years worth of dirt, Nayara found herself staring at a door. Not just any door, this one bore markings, unlike anything in the Galactic Archaeological Society's extensive database. "Now we're getting somewhere," she grinned, her professional excitement temporarily overwhelming her perpetual sarcasm. The door slid open with surprising ease, revealing a chamber that had somehow remained sealed and preserved for millennia. The room was circular, its walls covered in writings that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. But what caught Nayara's attention was the object at its center, a sword, suspended in a beam of light that seemed to originate from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Oh, perfect," she sighed, already drafting the report in her head. "The Society is going to love this. Another mysterious artifact that probably comes with some sort of prophecy or curse. Just what my career needed." Following standard protocol, she attempted to secure the artifact for transport. That's when things got interesting. The sword wouldn't budge, not even a millimeter. She tried again, engaging her species-enhanced muscular system, nothing. She called in her research assistant, Thorax Prime, whose species was known for their incredible strength. He couldn't move it either. "This is getting ridiculous," Nayara grumbled, watching as Thorax's face turned an interesting shade of purple from exertion. "It's just a sword. A very old, probably very important sword, but still just a sword." She sent an emergency transmission to the Society, knowing full well what would happen next. Within days, her nice, quiet research site would be crawling with experts, theorists, and probably a few religious figures, claiming the sword belonged to their particular deity. "Whoever built this place must be laughing their extinct heads off right now," she said to no one in particular, settling in to document every detail of the chamber. "Some artifacts are meant to be found, and some artifacts are meant to drive archaeologists absolutely crazy. I wonder which one you are." Little did Nayara know, she was about to find out, and the answer would challenge everything she thought she knew about the galaxy's history. Just as Nayara predicted, her peaceful research site transformed into a circus within days. The Galactic Archaeological Society had dispatched their finest minds, which mostly meant sending the most politically connected scientists with the biggest funding grants. "Welcome to the Astroloth Sword Exhibition," she announced to no one in particular, watching as yet another specialist failed to move the artifact. Today's entertainment features the mighty Kraxon warriors, who can supposedly lift entire starships but cannot, apparently, budge a sword that weighs less than my breakfast. The Kraxon delegation stormed out, their pride wounded more than their muscles. They were the 15th species to try and fail in the past week alone. Professor Raul Dex arrived next, his floating platform humming as it carried his gelatinous form into the chamber. The renowned theoretical physicist had published countless papers on ancient technology, most of which Nayara used as makeshift sleep aids. Fascinating. Simply fascinating. Rawls' translation matrix conveyed his excitement with a series of bubbling sounds. The quantum entanglement readings are off the charts. This artifact exists in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Does that mean you can lift it? Nayara asked, not bothering to hide her smirk. Well, no, Rawl admitted, his translucent body flushing a deeper shade of blue. But the theoretical implications are groundbreaking. The testing continued. The hive mind of Sector 7 sent their strongest drone cluster. The legendary strength masters of Pluton 9 dispatched their champion. Even the mysterious gaseous beings of the Nebula Confederation tried to manipulate the sword with their supposedly all-powerful psychic abilities. Nothing worked. The problem, declared Admiral Zenrock of the Military Science Division, is that we're thinking too conventionally. His cybernetic eye whirred as it analyzed the sword for the 100th time. This is clearly a weapon of immense power. It requires a specific activation sequence. Nayara watched as the Admiral's team attached their latest device to the sword, a quantum harmonic resonator that cost more than her entire research budget for the next decade. The machine hummed, glowed, and promptly short-circuited. "Have you tried saying please?" she suggested, earning several disapproving looks from the assembled scientists. Professor Rawl Dex's assistant, Lyra Knox, approached Nayara during one of the rare quiet moments. The young researcher's bioluminescent markings pulsed with enthusiasm as she shared her latest theory. "What if we're all missing something obvious?" Lyra whispered, her antennae twitching excitedly. "The inscriptions on the walls, they're not just decorative. They're telling a story, but it's not complete. Notice how they seem to change depending on who's looking at them." Before Nayara could respond, another commotion erupted. The spiritual conclave had arrived, led by High Priestess Samara Vale, whose flowing robes seemed to defy gravity itself. "This is clearly a sacred artifact," Samara announced, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 ancient traditions. "Only the pure of spirit may attempt to claim it." 3 hours of ritual cleansing and ceremonial chanting later, the sword remained unmoved, and the High Priestess's dignity lay in tatters. The Galactic Council demanded daily updates. Theory after theory emerged, each more outlandish than the last. Some claimed the sword was a key to unlimited power. Others insisted it was a cosmic joke left by ancient pranksters. One particularly creative researcher suggested it wasn't a sword at all, but a sophisticated food replicator that had malfunctioned. "Here's my theory," Nayara announced during one particularly heated debate. "We're all idiots. We've got the combined knowledge of thousands of civilizations, technology that can bend reality itself, and more degrees than stars in the sky. Yet here we are, stumped by what essentially amounts to a pointy stick stuck in a fancy light show." Professor Rawl Dex's body rippled with amusement. "Perhaps that's precisely why we can't solve it. We're overthinking everything." Speaking of overthinking, Lyra interjected, "Has anyone noticed that the energy readings spike whenever we argue about the sword? It's almost as if..." Her observation was cut short by the arrival of yet another research team, this one claiming they could molecularly bond with the sword's atomic structure. Their attempt ended with 3 broken machines, 1 singed tentacle, and a new set of scorch marks on the chamber ceiling. As the day wound down, Nayara found herself alone in the chamber, staring at the infuriating artifact that had turned her simple research assignment into a galactic spectacle. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she asked the sword. The ambient light seemed to flicker slightly, almost like a wink. What none of them realized was that their greatest breakthrough would come from the most unexpected source, one that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the galaxy's history and their place in it. The day Maya Winters arrived on Astroloth, most of the assembled scientists mistook her for a maintenance worker. Nayara watched with barely concealed amusement as the human navigated through the crowded research base, her simple environmental suit a stark contrast to the advanced technology surrounding her. "You must be lost," Admiral Zenrock said, his cybernetic eye whirring as he blocked her path. "Service personnel quarters are in the lower levels." Maya pulled out her credentials, displayed on what appeared to be an archaic tablet computer. "Actually, I'm your new xenoarchaeologist, Maya Winters, Earth Division." The silence that followed was almost worth the 3 months of dealing with failed experiments. Almost. Impossible. Professor Raul Dex bubbled through his translator. The Galactic Council would never send A. His gelatinous form rippled with diplomatic discomfort. A human Maya supplied helpfully. And yet, here I am. Funny how life works sometimes. Nayara stepped forward, partly because protocol demanded it, and partly because she was enjoying the collective discomfort of her colleagues. Welcome to Project Sword, Dr. Winters. I'm lead researcher Nayara Zen. Try not to take offense at my esteemed colleagues. They're brilliant scientists who happen to be terrible at basic manners. The human's face curved into what Nayara recognized as a smile. No offense taken. I get this reaction pretty much everywhere, though usually people at least wait until I've put my bags down before questioning my species' competence. As Maya set up her workstation, the whispers began. Humans were newcomers to the galactic community, barely a century into space travel. Their technology was considered primitive, their methods unorthodox, and their presence in advanced research projects was virtually unheard of. I heard they still use combustion engines on some of their vehicles, one researcher muttered. Did you know they can't even perform basic telepathic communication? Another added. Their lifespans are ridiculously short, a third chimed in. She'll be dead before we even finish preliminary testing. Maya ignored them all, methodically unpacking her equipment. Her instruments looked like antiques compared to the quantum analyzers and psychic resonance detectors scattered around the chamber. But there was something different about her approach. While others rushed to apply their latest theories, she sat quietly, observing. Interesting method you have there, Nayara commented, watching as Maya sketched the sword chamber with an actual physical writing tool. Most researchers start with molecular scanning. Sometimes old school works best, Maya replied, adding details to her drawing. When you rely too much on advanced technology, you miss the obvious things, like how the sword's position changes slightly depending on the time of day. Nayara blinked all 4 of her eyes. It what? Watch the shadow it casts, Maya pointed with her pencil. It shifts about 2 millimeters every hour, but not in sync with the movement of the 3 suns. It's following some other rhythm. Before Nayara could process this observation, High Priestess Samara Vale swept into the chamber, her robes somehow even more dramatic than the day before. A human, she proclaimed, managing to make the words sound like a rare genetic disorder. The Council cannot be serious. This artifact is clearly meant for beings of higher spiritual evolution. Maya's response was to pull out a sandwich and take a large bite. Higher spiritual evolution, huh? How's that working out with lifting the sword? Several gasps echoed through the chamber. Even Nayara had to admire the human's nerve. Nobody spoke to the High Priestess that way. Our attempts have been temporarily unsuccessful, Samara admitted stiffly. But we understand the profound metaphysical implications of. You can't lift it either, Maya concluded, finishing her sandwich. Got it. The tension in the room could have powered a small starship. Admiral Zenrock's cybernetic components whirred in agitation. Professor Raul Dex's usual blue coloring had shifted to an alarmed purple. Even the normally unflappable Lyra Nox's bioluminescent markings were pulsing rapidly. But something about the human's presence seemed to affect the sword. The ambient light surrounding it flickered differently, almost like it was responding to her proximity. Only Nayara seemed to notice, too busy watching Maya to join in the general outrage. Tell me, Dr. Winters, Nayara asked later, after the others had retreated to nurse their wounded pride, why did Earth Division send you specifically? Maya looked up from her sketches, her eyes reflecting the sword's mysterious light. Because I asked questions nobody else thought to ask. Like why an ancient civilization would leave a sword that nobody could lift, in a chamber that perfectly preserves it, with inscriptions that change based on who's looking at them. And what answers did you find? That's the interesting part, Maya smiled. The answers were there all along. We just needed someone primitive enough to see them. The way she said primitive made Nayara wonder if perhaps the galaxy's assessment of humans was missing something crucial. As if in agreement, the sword's light pulsed once, briefly but distinctly, casting strange shadows across Maya's face. The next few days would prove just how wrong they had all been about humans, and about Maya Winters in particular. The arrival of the Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Council turned the research base into what Maya called a three-ring circus, though nobody else understood the reference. Nayara watched as an endless parade of dignitaries made their attempts at the sword, each failure more spectacular than the last. Behold, the power of the United Systems, announced Chancellor Cora Vex, her ceremonial armor gleaming under the chamber's lights. Her species was known for their superior strength and technological advancement. She approached the sword with absolute confidence. 3 minutes later, the Chancellor's medical team was treating her for what they diplomatically called temporary gravitational disagreement. That makes failure number 2047, Maya noted, adding another mark to her paper notebook. Give or take a few diplomatic incidents. Nayara glanced at the human's growing collection of notes and sketches. While everyone else relied on quantum computers and neural interfaces, Maya covered her workspace with paper drawings, sticky notes, and what appeared to be string connecting different observations. Your method seems. Nayara searched for a diplomatic word. Primitive, Maya suggested with a grin. Like using actual eyes to observe instead of scanning everything with particles we barely understand. Before Nayara could respond, Professor Raul Dex's excited bubbling interrupted them. Extraordinary news. The Quantum Consciousness Collective has agreed to attempt interfacing with the artifact. The collective was legendary, a species that had evolved beyond physical form into pure energy and thought. Their arrival created quite a spectacle, manifesting as a swirling vortex of light and knowledge. Stand back, Admiral Zenrock ordered, his cybernetic eye recording everything. This is history in the making. The collective surrounded the sword, their energy merging with the mysterious light that held it suspended. For a moment, it seemed like something might actually happen. The sword trembled slightly. Then the collective retreated, their communication roughly translating to "This is giving us a headache." Did anyone notice? Maya asked quietly, adding something to her notes. Notice what Nayara moved closer to the human's workspace. The sword didn't just resist them. It laughed at them. Maya pointed to her latest sketch. Watch the light patterns when someone tries to lift it. There's a ripple effect, like waves of amusement. Nayara was about to dismiss this as human imagination when she saw it herself. As the High Sovereign of the Plutonian Emperors attempted to move the sword with their legendary psychic abilities, the light actually seemed to dance with mirth. By the forgotten star, she whispered. It's been playing with us this whole time. Maya nodded, unfolding a large chart covered in complex drawings. And that's not all. Those changing inscriptions on the walls. They're not random. They're responding to questions, just not the ones we're asking. Her workspace had transformed into what she called a crime board, though Nayara failed to see any evidence of criminal activity. Strings connected different sketches, notes, and observations. At the center was a detailed drawing of the sword, but not as it appeared now. Look at this mark here. Maya pointed to a symbol near the sword's hilt. Everyone assumed it was decorative, but it changes slightly with each failure. It's counting. Counting what? I think Maya said slowly, it's counting until something specific happens, or until someone specific arrives. The chamber grew quiet as more researchers gathered around Maya's workspace. Even High Priestess Samara Vale drifted closer, her usual disdain temporarily overcome by curiosity. These patterns here. Maya continued, pointing to a series of sketches showing the wall inscriptions. They're not just changing randomly. They're telling a story, but you have to watch them over time. It's like reading a book where the words rearrange themselves based on what question you're asking. Professor Raul Dex's entire form vibrated with excitement. But what's the right question? Wrong approach. Maya shook her head. We've been asking questions, making demands, trying to force our way through. But look at how the light behaves when someone just stands quietly and observes. As if to demonstrate, she walked toward the sword. The ambient light shifted subtly, almost like it was turning to watch her. The inscriptions on the walls began to flow like liquid metal. The sword isn't just an artifact, Maya said softly. It's waiting for something, or someone. These marks here, she pointed to a sequence of symbols that seemed to pulse in response to her presence. They're not a warning or a prophecy. They're instructions. Instructions for what Admiral Zenrock demanded. For proving yourself worthy, Maya replied. But not through strength or technology or spiritual enlightenment. Look at the pattern of failed attempts. Each time someone tries to force the sword to submit to them, these marks change to show a different kind of failure. Nayara stepped closer to the sword, seeing it with new eyes. It's been testing us. Not testing, Maya corrected. Teaching. Every failure reveals something new about the sword's true purpose. But we've been so busy trying to prove our superiority that we missed the lesson. The chamber erupted into chaos as everyone tried to access Maya's observations simultaneously. Theories flew back and forth, each more elaborate than the last. The Supreme Chancellor demanded immediate action. The High Priestess called for another ceremonial cleansing. Professor Raldex began drafting a new paper on quantum consciousness interaction with ancient artifacts. But Nayara noticed something they all missed. As the arguments raged on, Maya quietly continued her observations, adding to her notes, and the sword's light, almost imperceptibly, began to pulse in rhythm with her movements. "You've figured something out, haven't you?" Nayara asked, when the chamber had finally emptied for the night. Maya looked up from her notes, a strange smile playing across her face. "Not figured out, remembered. There's something about this sword that feels familiar, like a story I heard long ago but can't quite recall." The sword's light flickered, and for just a moment, Nayara could have sworn it was nodding in agreement. The breakthrough came during the planet's rare triple sunset, when all three suns aligned perfectly. Maya had been sketching the sword's latest light patterns when she suddenly dropped her notebook. "Of course," she whispered. "We've been reading it backwards." Nayara, who had grown accustomed to the human's peculiar methods, moved closer. Reading what backwards? Everything. Maya started pulling down her various drawings, rearranging them on the floor in a spiral pattern. "The sword isn't counting our failures. It's counting down to this exact moment." The chamber's inscriptions began to shimmer more intensely than ever before, reflecting the unique light of the triple sunset. Maya walked slowly around the room, touching specific symbols that seemed to respond to her presence. Dr. Winter's Admiral Zenrock's voice cut through the chamber as he burst in with his security team. "The Council demands immediate results. They're threatening to shut down the project." "Perfect timing," Maya replied, not taking her eyes off the walls. "You might want to record this." Before anyone could stop her, she stepped directly into the beam of light holding the sword. The entire chamber hummed with energy, and the inscriptions on the walls began moving like waves in a storm. "By all known laws of physics, this should be impossible," Professor Raldex exclaimed, his gelatinous form rippling with excitement. "That's humanity's specialty," Maya said with a grin. "Doing the impossible because nobody told us we couldn't." The sword's light changed color, shifting through spectrums that even Nayara's enhanced vision couldn't fully process. And then Maya began to speak not in any modern language, but in something ancient that seemed to resonate with the very stones of the chamber. "How is she doing that?" High Priestess Samra Vale demanded, her robe swirling with agitation. Those words were lost eons ago. No, Nayara realized, watching as the walls responded to Maya's voice. They weren't lost. They were waiting. Maya's voice grew stronger, speaking words that made the air itself vibrate. With each phrase, new inscriptions appeared on the walls, not changing this time, but revealing themselves as if they had always been there, waiting to be uncovered. "It's a library," Maya announced, switching back to standard speech. "This whole chamber, everything we thought was just decoration, it's the greatest library ever created. And the sword isn't just a sword, it's the key." The light beam surrounding the sword expanded, projecting images into the air around them. They watched in awe as entire civilizations rose and fell in moments, as technologies beyond their comprehension played out before their eyes. "Humans," Maya continued, her voice filled with wonder, "we weren't late to join the galactic community. We were the ones who helped build it." The projections showed scenes that defied everything they thought they knew about history. Humans working alongside ancient species, creating wonders that would be forgotten by time. building alliances, solving impossible problems, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. That's absurd, Admiral Zenrock sputtered. Humans barely achieved spaceflight a century ago. No, Maya corrected him gently. We achieved it again a century ago. The first time. The first time was so long ago that even we forgot. But the sword remembered. The chamber filled with more holographic data than all the combined libraries of the Galactic Council. Star charts showing worlds that no longer existed. Scientific formulas that made Professor Raldex's entire form quiver with excitement. Historical records that proved Maya's incredible claim. The ancient humans didn't leave this sword as a weapon or a test of strength, Maya explained. They left it as a reminder, a way to reawaken the knowledge when we were ready to find it again. But why make it so only humans could activate it, Nayara asked, though she was beginning to understand. Because humans were different, Maya said, reaching toward the sword. We never accepted limitations. We looked at the impossible and saw opportunity. The sword wasn't waiting for strength or technology or spiritual enlightenment. It was waiting for someone stubborn enough to try understanding it instead of conquering it. The sword's light pulsed once more, and suddenly Maya could grasp its hilt. The weapon that had resisted the strongest beings in the galaxy lifted as easily as if it had been waiting for her touch all along. As she raised the sword, the final inscriptions revealed themselves. They told a story of a human civilization that had reached heights unimaginable even by modern standards. But they had seen a darkness coming, a threat so vast that it would remake the galaxy itself. They knew they couldn't stop it, Maya said softly, reading the ancient words. So they did something else. They made sure we would survive it, made sure we would rise again. And they left us this when we were ready. Ready for what High Priestess Samara Vale asked, her earlier disdain replaced by awe. Maya turned to face them, the sword glowing with power in her hands, ready to remember who we are, what we can do. The darkness they saw coming, it's still out there, and now we know how to face it. The chamber hummed with energy as ancient systems, dormant for millennia, began to awaken. Nayara watched as her human friend stood transformed, holding not just a sword, but the legacy of a civilization that had refused to be forgotten. Well, Nayara said, her voice carrying both humor and respect, I suppose this means we'll have to update all our history books. And our physics books, Professor Raldex added excitedly. And our understanding of everything we thought we knew, Maya finished, looking at the sword with newfound purpose. The real question is, are we ready for what comes next? The sword's light pulsed one final time, as if to say, ready or not, the next chapter of galactic history was about to begin. The Supreme Chancellor's emergency session of the Galactic Council had to be moved to the sword chamber itself, partly because Maya refused to leave, but mostly because the sword now responded to her presence like an eager puppy following its favorite person. You understand, the Chancellor said, her voice echoing through the chamber. This changes everything we thought we knew about galactic history. Oh, it gets better, Maya replied, the sword humming contentedly in her grip. Watch this. She raised the sword, pointing it toward the chamber's center. The blade's glow intensified, and suddenly the air filled with a three-dimensional star map, unlike anything their modern technology could produce. Countless worlds sparkled in the display, many in regions of space they'd thought uninhabitable. These are all the worlds humans helped build, Maya explained. And these, she twisted the sword slightly, causing new points of light to appear, are the worlds we haven't rediscovered yet. Professor Raldex's excitement caused him to temporarily lose cohesion, splashing drops of his gelatinous form onto nearby researchers. The technological implications alone are staggering. The power requirements for such a display should be impossible. Impossible is just another word for fun, Maya grinned, making more star systems appear with casual movements of the sword. At least, that's what our ancestors thought. Nayara watched as her friend manipulated ancient technology with the ease of someone who'd been born to it. You said there's a darkness coming. What exactly are we facing? The sword's light dimmed slightly, and Maya's expression grew serious. Something that exists between galaxies. Something that hunts civilizations that reach too far, too fast. Our ancestors found a way to hide us, to let humanity start over from scratch when the danger had passed. But they knew we'd need help facing it when it returns. "And you expect us to trust humans with this responsibility?" Admiral Zenrock demanded. "Your species can barely manage interstellar travel." "No," Maya corrected him. "They expect you to work with us. Look at the data. Humans never built their greatest achievements alone. We were always at our best when working with others, combining different perspectives to solve impossible problems." The sword pulsed in agreement, projecting images of ancient collaborations. Humans working alongside species that no longer existed, solving problems that would baffle modern scientists, building wonders that survived millions of years. Besides, Maya added with a smirk, would you rather face cosmic horror alone, or with the species crazy enough to look at a sword no one could lift and say challenge accepted? High Priestess Samara Vale stepped forward, her earlier prejudice replaced by something approaching respect. The prophecies spoke of a time when the old wisdom would return. We thought it meant our own ancient knowledge. "Knowledge doesn't care who discovers it," Maya replied. "Neither did our ancestors. They left this legacy for everyone, not just humans. They just needed someone stubborn enough to figure out how to access it." The Supreme Chancellor raised her hands for silence as the chamber erupted in excited discussion. "The question remains, what do we do with this information?" "Wrong question," Nayara interjected, surprising herself. "Maya, what happens if you let someone else hold the sword while you're touching it?" Maya's eyes lit up. "Now that's the right question." She turned to Professor Raul Dex, whose form rippled with surprise. "Professor, would you care to make history?" As the gelatinous scientist extended a pseudopod toward the sword's hilt, Maya maintained her grip. The weapon's glow extended to encompass them both, and suddenly Raul Dex's excited bubbling translated into perfect understanding for everyone present. "The sword isn't just a key to knowledge," he exclaimed. "It's a universal translator, a teaching tool, a bridge between species. The possibilities for scientific advancement are limitless," Maya finished, "just like they were meant to be. Anyone want to go next?" What followed was perhaps the strangest ceremony in galactic history. One by one, representatives of different species shared the sword's power. Each contact revealed new aspects of the ancient legacy, new pieces of a puzzle they could only solve together. "You planned this," Nayara accused Maya later, as they watched teams of scientists from across the galaxy begin cataloging the chamber's vast repository of knowledge. "Nope," Maya laughed. "I just did what humans do best, jumped in without a proper plan and figured it out as I went along. The sword did most of the work. It's got quite a sense of humor, you know." As if to prove her point, the sword created a small light show above Admiral Zenrock's head, making it look like he was wearing a sparkly crown. The Admiral remained blissfully unaware as he coordinated with his team. The Supreme Chancellor approached them, looking somewhat less supremely confident than before. "The Council has reached a decision. We're establishing a new division, the Legacy Initiative. We want you both to lead it." Both of us, Nayara blinked in surprise. "The sword responds to humans," the Chancellor explained, "but the knowledge it contains belongs to all of us. We'll need teams of researchers from every species working together. Besides," she added with what might have been a smile, "someone needs to keep Dr. Winters from accidentally activating any more ancient superweapons." "They're not weapons," Maya protested. "They're keys, tools, really fancy universal remotes if you want to get technical about it. Universal remotes that can rewrite our understanding of physics," Nayara pointed out. "Exactly. Isn't it exciting?" Looking at her human friend's enthusiasm, Nayara couldn't help but laugh. "You know what the really funny part is? After all our advanced scanning technology, after all our theories and tests, what finally solved the mystery was a human with a pencil and paper," Maya finished. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." The sword chimed musically, casting patterns of light that somehow managed to convey amused agreement. So Nayara said, watching as more research teams arrived through the transport platforms, ready to help rewrite galactic history. Maya lifted the sword, its gentle glow illuminating her smile. "Always. But first, want to help me convince the Admiral that the crown of lights above his head is a very serious scientific phenomenon that needs to be studied extensively. As laughter filled the chamber, the ancient sword pulsed contentedly. After millions of years, the wait was finally over. The galaxy's species were talking to each other again, really talking, sharing knowledge and perspectives, and bad jokes about senior military officers. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, something ancient stirred, sensing the awakening of long-dormant powers. But this time, when it came hunting, it would find more than just one civilization waiting. It would find them all, standing together, led by a species just crazy enough to think they could win. And they had a sword to prove it,